Did you know that a single gesture can change the course of history? That's exactly what happened when Pontius Pilate, faced with a crucial decision, washed his hands in an act of apparent neutrality. But what seemed like a simple way out led to the crucifixion of Jesus and the dark decline of Pilate himself. And here's the truth few discuss. The choices we avoid today can haunt us tomorrow. What price did he pay for this omission? And more importantly, what does this story teach us about our own decisions? If you want to discover how a powerful governor became a symbol of weakness, get ready to learn the lessons of one of the most controversial figures in history. Not just his downfall, but the eternal impact of his choices. Let's dive together into this story that still resonates today. Pontius Pilate wasn't just any governor. He held a delicate position. In one of the most turbulent regions of the Roman Empire, governing Judea was a thankless mission. As tension between Romans and Jews was constant, Pilate was seen as a rigid man, someone who made decisions to please Rome and impose authority, often ignoring the human impact of his actions. His story demonstrates how power and responsibility can go hand in hand, but not always in the right direction. When he decided to wash his hands of Jesus, Pilate made a move that, at first glance, seemed like an attempt to escape judgment. But did he really escape responsibility? Imagine a situation where you have to make an important decision, like a leader in a team, choosing between maintaining harmony or confronting something wrong. Like Pilate, many opt for the path that seems easier at the moment, but may demand a higher price later. His choices reverberated not only through his life, but through the history of humanity. It's fascinating how small gestures can carry enormous symbolism. Washing one's hands, a seemingly trivial act, became synonymous with avoidance. How many times in our lives do we choose to wash our hands when we should face the problem head-on? The consequences may not be immediate, but accumulate over time. Pilate, in trying to escape the pressure, opened the door to a series of events that forever changed his story, and that of Jesus. The encounter between Pontius Pilate and Jesus is one of the most enigmatic and profound moments in history. On one side, a Roman governor accustomed to making quick, pragmatic decisions. On the other, a man who presented himself as the bearer of truth. Imagine Pilate's discomfort when faced with a figure who didn't defend himself, didn't beg, but simply said, "My kingdom is not of this world." At that moment, facing a choice that would define destinies, Pilate confronted something beyond politics or power. A matter of conscience. Even convinced of Jesus' innocence, Pilate lacked the courage to stand against the enraged crowd. He tried to avoid responsibility by offering an alternative, a strategy we still see today in moral conflicts. By presenting Jesus and Barabbas to the people, Pilate assumed the decision would be obvious. But surprisingly, the crowd chose Barabbas. How often under pressure do we hope others will decide for us? And when they choose the unexpected, what remains for us? Pilate discovered that avoidance wouldn't free him from the consequences. Washing his hands was his last effort to ease his guilt. But the marks of that moment went far beyond a symbolic gesture. In our daily dilemmas, how often do we try to justify our choices with phrases like, "It's not my problem," or "I did what I could"? Pilate teaches us that even when we try to hide behind others' decisions, our conscience always follows us. And in that instant, Jesus' fate was sealed and Pilate's began to unravel. After the crucifixion of Jesus, Pilate's trajectory was marked by a spiral of failures. He continued as governor of Judea, but his decisions became increasingly questionable. In a notorious episode, he ordered the execution of Galileans as they performed religious sacrifices, a direct affront to Jewish traditions. Such actions only fueled local revolts. Pilate seemed incapable of learning that governing wasn't just about imposing force, but also about understanding the people under his rule. It wasn't long before another significant incident sealed his fate. After massacring Samaritans who had ascended Mount Gerizim in search of sacred relics, Jewish leaders brought their complaints directly to Emperor Tiberius. This was the final straw. Pilate, once feared for his authority, was stripped of his position and exiled to Gaul. Imagine the humiliation of a man who, accustomed to wielding absolute power, suddenly found himself powerless. A clear example of how abuse of power can destroy even the mightiest rulers. Far from Judea and the center of decision-making, Pilate was consumed by guilt and regret. There are countless stories of people who, like him, were the weight of bad decisions. In modern times, we see political leaders, business executives, and public figures facing similar downfalls. After ignoring ethical values, Pilate ultimately took his own life, unable to bear the emptiness left by his choices. And so his name became forever tied to tragedy, while the events he tried to avoid continue to echo throughout the world. Pontius Pilate's story carries a timeless lesson about the consequences of our choices, or the lack thereof. Facing Jesus, he had the chance to act according to his conscience, but chose to yield to pressure. It's easy to judge Pilate as a weak leader, but how many of us face similar dilemmas? Whether at work, in relationships, or personal decisions, we often choose the easier path, avoiding conflicts or responsibilities that seem too heavy to bear. Pilate shows us that avoiding tough decisions may bring momentary relief, but the consequences are inevitable. He tried to wash his hands of his guilt, but the weight of that act never left him. Today, think about your own life. In what situations have you been washing your hands? It might be something small, like avoiding a difficult conversation, or something bigger like failing to take a stand on issues that impact your family or community. Taking responsibility may be uncomfortable, but it's what defines our character. More than a warning, Pilate's trajectory is an invitation to reflection. He stood face to face with Jesus, but chose to ignore the truth before him. And what about us? What truths are we ignoring out of fear or convenience? When we remain silent in the face of what's right, we stop growing as individuals and allow mistakes to multiply around us. Pilate's story continues to challenge us, urging us to be courageous in our choices and never underestimate the impact of our decisions. Now I ask you, how many times have you faced difficult choices and chosen to avoid them? Pontius Pilate's story is a powerful reminder that the decisions we avoid today can become the burdens we carry tomorrow. Are you ready to face your own dilemmas head-on and transform your life, or will you wash your hands like he did? Think about it. If this reflection resonated with you, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications here. You'll continue learning valuable lessons like this, ones that can change the way you view your choices and responsibilities. Don't wait. Click activate and start your journey of transformation now. See you in the next video.